if you want to reinforce this concept about God's power being manifest unto the children of men, the priesthood is our way to access his power in our life, then I think you want to find some simple way they can understand. And in the insights, I talked about living water and flowing through pipes. You also could do it with an electricity analogy. That's where this week's printable comes in. So I give it to you in a few different forms, but the first one you're going to see is this very generic looking, outlet cover. The goal here is that you might print a few of these, and before class or in your house, you might just put a few of these around. Maybe put them exactly where they should be, like a few inches up from the ground, sort of, in places where it'd be handy to have an outlet. Or you might put them in a very odd place, like you might put them on the corner of your desk or something and talk about how you wish you had an outlet right there. Put them in a few different places. Then as your kids come into class, talk about the priesthood. In fact, if you go in the creative notes, I walk you through some really good resources that the church has put together so that you can talk about how we can access the power of the priesthood. The QR codes that are on the back of the handout help you get to those resources as well. But I would just kind of talk about the priesthood for a while. And then as your kids settle in, maybe you have a power cord, maybe you have a phone that needs charging, and you would say, you should plug this in. Can you try and plug this in for me? And that's probably when they'll notice the outlets on the wall. It's not that they're convincing enough that they probably would actually stick a plug in, but they're enough that the kids probably wouldn't have, paid attention to them beforehand. And then you'll talk about why you can't plug into this source of power. What is it missing? Even though it looks just like the switch plates, it's the exact same size as the ones they see on the wall. Why can't they actually charge their phone with it? And that's when you talk about what's in the walls, right? There are these conduits of power that you have to access at certain points, and certain materials have to be used. And those materials have to get inspected often. They often have little stamps and stickers on the back of them so that they can show that they were authorized materials that are approved for the whatever voltage, right? All those things are in place when it comes to using electrical power. And then I would take that and compare it to the priesthood. That the priesthood is really similar in that God's power is intended to flow out to us so that we can have joy and blessings that flow into our lives through the covenants that we make that are authorized through the priesthood. But in order for that to happen, we have to use his authorized materials. No matter how many of these I stick on the wall, I don't actually get access to power. Instead, I have to use the authorized materials. And that's what the lesson is all about. That Section 84 is helping the saints understand what are his authorized materials? How do those things go together? And why does that create joy and safety when we do things in his way? What would be the hazard of just sticking one of these next to my kitchen sink because I thought it would be a good place for a spot to go? The Lord has much safer, much better understanding of how to get his priesthood power to flow to every pocket of the planet. And in order for that to happen, he has his authorized ways. And we have to just sort of get on board with that and trust that there is more that we don't understand. I don't think it's so much like burying your head in the sand as trusting in his much broader viewpoint of what his priesthood power really is and the blessings it can really offer when we do things in his way. So on the handout portion of this, the generic faceplates are one part of the printable. The handout portion is something your kids could take home so that hopefully they could teach the same lesson to their families, or maybe stick it in their scriptures so they could teach it when they're on their missions to help people understand the concept of God's power. The power of the priesthood allows the power of godliness to be manifest, but it has to be done in his way. And the quotes on the back will help you get there. If you have youth who have questions about women and the priesthood, or about how, kids after age 8 can access the priesthood through their baptismal covenants, these QR codes will help you. The top one takes you to President Nelson's direction. I found this, it was in the For Strength of the Youth magazine. I think it was from last month. But I thought his quotes about not just accessing the priesthood, but also how you can do it better. Like, what can I change in my life so that I can understand this better and access the strength of Christ better? That's that first QR code. The second one on the bottom will take you to more of kind of a broad view targeted to youth about how the priesthood works, how it applies to men and women, and how they can use it in their lives. So hopefully this little teaching tool will help them hold on to these concepts much, much longer.